All right. Happy Thursday. Yeah, awesome. Just making sure everyone's awake. Good to see so many people here. In a way, it's good to see so many people because I know that every single one of you has probably been on a journey, right? Has anybody been on a journey with your health, with maybe your kids' health? I know there's a lot of providers here. Raise your hand if you're a provider. Awesome. So y'all are here to learn maybe just a little bit more information on neuro developmental disorders. So you're absolutely going to get that, right? And we've all been on a journey with our health. Maybe we've been diagnosed with something. Maybe we've been diagnosed with. I looked at the roster. I know people are here for autism, sensory processing, ADHD, anxiety, depression. I'm looking at people with children that are dealing with constipation, ODD, OCD, right? All these things, right? And so what we're going to be talking about today is really how the body heals. We're going to be talking about putting healing in the right order, because if you're here, chances are you have already gone, like maybe if you're here representing a child, you've already gone to different therapists, right? And it absolutely takes a village for every single thing that what you guys are here for, right? But the hope today is to give you new information, right? We know, like I used to joke that Google existed and you can go on Google, and Google's a good thing because it can lead you down a good path, but it can lead you down some dark paths as well, right? But now we have ChatGPT, right? I mean, Dr. GPT, Chat Doctor, right? It's our friend Chad. We like to call him Chad. There's tons of information out there, right? But what really matters is that you get the information that you need, and that you actually have a resource, okay? So my name is Dr. Cody Capilouto. I've been in practice for 8 years. I am a pediatric chiropractor. How many people have heard about pediatric chiropractic? All right, so this is good because most people, when they hear chiropractors, what do they think of? What about, yeah, cracking backs, neck pain, headaches, right? So, I want to start with that because chiropractic has actually never been about pain. It's always been about helping the nervous system function. And so I know like everyone has a different preconceived notion about chiropractic. And so just for tonight, no matter what kind of thought you have about chiropractic, I just invite you to kind of take that thought and just put it to the side, and you can just set it down there. And by the end of the talk, if you still want to take that, you can take it with you. But if you want to leave it, I'll take it for you as well. Because the thing is that yes, chiropractic is always about helping the nervous system function better. And if you're here, you're already probably part of tons of Facebook groups, moms groups, crunchy moms groups, alternative, holistic health. You've gone down the rabbit trail. You've tried going dairy-free, gluten-free, doing oat milk, almond milk. You've gone down that path. You've done the essential oils, and you're doing anything and everything, but something is still causing the struggle, right? And so we want to get to another perspective here. And my goal is that you would learn something here tonight, all right? At the end of the talk here, I'm going to give you an opportunity. If anything that I'm talking about perks your interest for either yourself or your child, then I'm going to give you the opportunity to do that. But this presentation is full of information, so no matter if you take action or not, you are absolutely going to get what you need out of this talk here, all right? Now, most people, again, when they think about chiropractic, they think about neck pain, back pain, and some people have gone even so far as to say that chiropractors are quacks. Has anybody ever heard that? That chiropractors are quacks, right? Now, as chiropractors, we just happen to believe that you are designed to be healthy and not sick. Does anybody have that weird, radical idea that your body's meant to be healthy and not get sick? Right? And so we believe that. So rather than studying disease and what causes an individual to be sick, we focus on health and what causes an individual to actually build health, right? Because every single one of us is designed to be healthy. If you're here representing your kid is designed to be healthy. That should be the standard, right? And it would make logical sense that if your child or if you are dealing with any symptom that your body has not been able to overcome, it would make logical sense that there must be something that's interfering with that process. Does that make sense? Is that logical? Yeah. So we have to go back and we have to ask the question, if our bodies are so intelligent, why has it not healed on its own? And that's what chiropractic has been trying to do for over 130 years is study what does it mean for somebody to actually be healthy. So that's some of the things that we're going to get into. So in my line of work here, we see tons of kids in this office of all kinds of health challenges and struggles, whether it's autism, sensory processing, ADHD, anxiety, meltdowns, tantrums, constipation, OCD, ODD. seizures. There's so many things that we help with in this office, and it's because I have chosen to go above and really focus on this world of pediatric health. There's a conference called the Autism One Conference. There is a whole network of doctors who are pursuing how to help kids with autism. There's naturopaths, there's medical doctors, there's DOs, which is doctor of osteopathy, there's chiropractors that all come together at this Autism One conference to put our heads together, right? To not bang against each other and say my way is right, but it's to say, hey, we got to fix this because we have an epidemic right now. Do we know that? We know that, right? And I could go through some of these statistics here, and I'll get into those in just a little bit. But we know that there's an epidemic. In time, we don't have a lot of time, right? Because we've seen what the numbers are doing. And so again, I just want to start with, again, that everything about tonight's talk is going to be talking about your body was designed to heal. And giving you kind of the neurology of how it heals and some indications if it's not doing that. All right. So I want to start with this first patient testimonial. This actually came from this one patient, Giselle. Her son here lost motor control of his head. It was a very traumatic birth. There was forceps used. There was induction. There was cord wrap at first, and so for her son here, very low tone, right? Head was going to the side, no eye contact whatsoever, and just very low tone. Now, usually when we see this, first thing we think of is strengthen the muscles, right? And so she had gone to physical therapy, right, and tried to do these different exercises and stretches and activating these muscles and everything. And they were kind of running into a plateau. So she brought him in here. And after his first adjustment, I just want to open your eyes to this, because after the first adjustment, he actually had way better tone in his muscles because we were affecting the nerves that go to the muscles. But we were also seeing increased focus. We're seeing that he's actually chewing and his jaw was moving the exact way that it should. All right. And so this was a very heavy case because she had tried everything for her child, obviously. And what I just want to say is that no matter what the situation, right? Again, that your body was meant to thrive. If you're here representing yourself, your child's design was to thrive. She actually posted about this on Instagram. So if you follow us on Instagram, you'll be able to find that there. That was about a year and a half ago. So they did this kind of funny video of like before versus after. But this is life change for this kiddo, right? And that's what we get to do each and every day. And if we can restore the power and the ability for this child to actually meet neurodevelopmental milestones in this kiddo, then it's possible for every kiddo. And the thing is, another principle here is that if you've been struggling with something, or if your child has been struggling with a health condition or a struggle, it simply means that they are locked in to that dysfunction. And what we know about kiddos, like how do you measure health in a kiddo, is how adaptable they can be, right? When a challenge or stressor, or say they have stomach issues, right? Or reflux, right? We never want to see those things continue, right? And anytime you're seeing something where a child is not progressing through it, it simply means that something is stuck there, right? And we have to do new things, always going to new providers, never giving up until you get the answer that you want, okay? So the principles and concepts that I'm going to be going through tonight largely are not my opinion. They are through peer-reviewed research. You will see that all the way through here. There are tons of books talking about epigenetics, talking about kind of this new post-COVID world that we're living in, talking about the stresses during COVID, right? Because we all went through so much trauma during that, and especially our kiddos, especially pregnant moms during that time. I mean, we're living in an epidemic right now of neurodevelopmental disorders and honestly stress, right? So we're living with more stress than we've ever had. So this is also part of our Instagram as well, but I'm standing here because we see patients within these four walls. And the reason why I'm doing this workshop is because, I mean, it's just a testament that all of you are here, that you're looking for help. And so we have to do something new. We have to do something different. And so we have an entire testimonial wall over there. You guys can see it on the way out. But this is why I do what I do. We have practices here in South Florida, in Austin, Texas, Denver, Colorado, and there's partner offices all around the country that are doing what we're doing, which is helping kiddos, individuals regain their health and break through the plateaus that they have been experiencing. All right, so we're going to be talking about what's going on, why it's going on, and most importantly, what to do next. Okay. When we look at the statistics, this is an old one, right? But we know, especially with RFK there, right? There's a lot more attention now on additives, on food additives, on autism, right? Regardless of what you think about RFK, right? But him being there has actually brought awareness to this. And the updated CDC numbers for 2024, do we know what they are? How many, especially like autism in boys, do we know what the number is? Well, they're saying in the general population, 1 in 31 children born today will be on some part of the autism spectrum. And that's scary. That's scary, right? We know that boys are more susceptible. African American boys are more susceptible, right? That's very clearly documented. And so again, time's running out. We have to figure out what is preventing, right? It's multifaceted, right? We're going to be going through all of this. But what is preventing the nervous system from breaking through those plateaus? What's causing their nervous system to get stuck in the state that it's in, right? And so we know that autism is at an all-time high. Right now, over 6 million kids have been diagnosed with ADHD, and it's like 1 in every 12 kids that'll be put on ADHD medication for the rest of their lives in middle school, right? And so again, we have to do something different here. There's OCD, right? OCD is on the rise. And anxiety, right? Especially post-COVID, like a lot of us deal with anxiety, and we have to get to the root of it, right? Because anxiety does not cause anxiety. Stressful situations do not cause anxiety, because you can put 2 people in the same stressful situation and one doesn't have anxiety, one does. So the situation, right? We've been taught that the environment around us causes it. We've been taught that the allergens floating in the air causes allergies. If the allergens caused allergies, then everybody that was exposed to the allergen would have allergies. But why is it that only some people have allergies, some people don't, right? It's not about the environment that's around us. It's how we adapt and respond to that environment. And we need to start thinking more about that, because, sometimes when you have a diagnosis or a label, like I had a mom in here just the other day, she's like, hey, I'm thinking about getting my child tested for autism. And I said, hey, you can absolutely do that, because when you get the diagnosis, it's like if you're drowning in the ocean and you need a life vest, or right, you need a lifesaver. When somebody throws you that lifesaver, it saves your life, right? And you can finally breathe. And sometimes that's what a diagnosis does, right? Because you get that, you're like, oh, I'm so happy that somebody told me now that I have ADHD. Now I know, right? But when somebody throws you that lifesaver in the middle of the ocean, it's comfortable for a little bit, but you go days, weeks, months with that lifesaver, and you realize that you're still in the ocean. Nobody's ever drug you back to shore. Right? So diagnoses can be very helpful, but at the same time, if we never get to the reason why you haven't been able to get through that, then we're just stopping too early, right? And so we have to get to the root of this. Why is it that the body is not able to get through this? All right. So we're going to be talking through biology, anatomy, and human principles here. All right. This is a car. Now, what do cars need in order to operate? They need, yes, good. They need gas, so they need power. They need power, and that could be the motor or the gas. They need the parts, because you have to have the parts. But if the car is there, if the car is turned on and all the parts are there, what does it need in order to go? It needs a driver, right? So it needs information. And I used to only put information here, but now there's Tesla, so it's self-driving, right? So it's kind of put me out of business here. So, but it needs information, or it needs intelligence, right? So I had to put the word intelligence. What about a computer? What does the computer need? What does the computer need in order? And we could say the same thing, right? Power and parts, and what else? And intelligence, right? Somebody or something to run it. All right. What about human body? What does that need to run? So blood, food, sleep, water, organs, right? So it needs parts, it needs motor, and it needs information and intelligence. Now, here's the thing. There's different providers and different doctors for these things, right? Like there's what's called parts doctors, right? If you go to a specialist, you go to a cardiologist, you go to a GI doctor, gastroenterologist, right? You go to maybe the psychologist, which I know that's a little bit more mental, right? But you go to the endocrinologist, right? You go to the rheumatologist, right? These are doctors that focus on the parts, okay? Now, your parts have to be healthy and your parts have to be functioning in order to live, right? So you have to have the parts. But there's also the motor, right? So those of you that are therapists, right, working with the motor systems. If it's speech therapists, you're working with the motor systems. If it's ABA, you're bringing them through different tasks, right? You're working with the motor. You're saying, hey, well, let's go do this thing, right? PT, OT, right? So there's different providers for the motor. But the part that we miss a lot is in the information of the body. So what part of the body deals with the information? The brain. And how does the brain communicate to the parts? Through the nerves, right? So your nervous system is the system here that is going to send information or intelligence to the different organs. Now, you've been to the traditional doctors, the specialists, right? You've been to maybe different therapists that work on the motor. How many people how many people have had their or their child's nervous system checked before? Okay, so if the brain, spinal cord, and the nervous system is that important, right? If somebody gets a TBI, if somebody gets a concussion, we know that that can affect the rest of the body, right? We know that just how our thoughts are, right? If we're locked into a fight or flight state, like if I said, all right, can you come finish this presentation for me? and I made you stand up here, right? We know that your palms would start to sweat. We know that your heartbeat would increase, right? Your heart doesn't do that on its own, right? Your brain perceives a threat, and therefore it causes, like, you might have to go to the bathroom, right? So your brain communicates with the gut, it communicates with the heart, the lungs, right? Your thyroid, your everything, right? So everything is dependent upon how well this intelligence, this information can get to the parts, right? And so because systems are made of parts, they're eventually designed to break down, right? Like this plant. Now, we have a plant in the front. It has seen better days, but there's actually a sign that says, please talk to the plant. So as you're leaving, please talk to the plant, give it good words. We want to make sure that that little plant survives, right? But us as humans, eventually one day we'll break down, right? Plants, if I keep it in the dark and I don't give it, sunlight and water or nutrients, it's going to do that, right? It's going to break down. So it also makes sense that as a human, like, what does it take a human to thrive? It also makes sense what you guys were saying, that is, if we or our children don't get the proper nutrients, or they don't move like they should, or they don't have the nutrients, they don't have the food, or they're exposed to toxins, these are all things that are going to prevent their body from doing the healing. And good. So yes, it works the same exact way. So we're going to be talking about these things, but we're also going to be talking about symptoms, because every single thing that you guys want to be fixed is a symptom. Now, are symptoms good or bad?
Good.
Oh, okay. I was expecting to hear the opposite, right? So symptoms are inherently good, all right? When we have a headache, if we consistently have anxiety, maybe, right? These are things that we perceive as bad. If we have digestive issues, of course, we don't want to feel bad, but that's actually the body's warning sign, right? Because how much sense, if I woke up in the middle of the night, I smelled smoke, and there was a fire in my kitchen, if I went to the fire alarm and I took the fire alarm out and I pulled the batteries out and went back to sleep, how intelligent would that be? Not very intelligent, right? So the symptoms are there for a reason. So thank God that we have symptoms, because God forbid if you don't have symptoms and there's a dysfunction that's underlying, by the time you see it, it's going to be big, right? So we have to understand that symptoms are very important, but again, they are telling us that there is a dysfunction, all right? So we don't want to cover up symptoms. There's a time and a place for that, right? There's a time and a place for covering up symptoms, but certainly not for the rest of your life, right? We got to keep searching, keep searching. If you've been to a doctor that says, hey, you're going to have to live with this for the rest of your life, you got to keep searching for sure, because what we know about the brain, about neuroplasticity is that it will continue to try to find a way, right, if you keep giving it proper input. So if there are effects here, we want to make sure that there are causes and that we get to the cause. Now, this is called the autism quadrangle here. This is by Paul Hardy. He's a medical doctor. He is actually a biomedical specialist. So he runs lab tests and he looks at underlying root causes of disease. He works at an autism institute. And he came up with this autism quadrangle. And so, what we know is that there is a rise of neurodevelopmental disorders. But in order for there to be a rise of neurodevelopmental disorders, we know that there are certain inputs, certain factors in our environment that are there. We know that at the base of everything is our genetics. And so, how we perceive the world, any stress or any toxins that come through our system filter through our genetics. Now, one caveat here, because some of you have done genetic testing, and it's true, right? There are some genes like the MTHFR, there's methylation genes, there's certain genes that can get switched on and off that can prevent somebody from detoxing, for instance. Like some of you might not detox as well as your neighbor, right? And so we know that genetics are absolutely at play there, but we can't only blame genetics, because while there's a rise of neurodevelopmental disorders, human genetics have not changed within the past 20, 30, 40, 50 years, okay? What's changed is toxins in our environment. It's our nutritional status, right? We're not having as many nutrients, and all of these things get passed through, and that's going to decide whether or not we express a neurodevelopmental disorder. Now, as it passes through this, we know that genetics are the base, but we can actually turn certain genes on and off through a principle called epigenetics. But as it passes through, Paul Hardy recognized that there were actually 4 main systems that have to be in order and have to be at functioning at 100%. So you have the immune system, the detoxification system, the GI system, and the nervous system. Now, why do you think he put the nervous system at the top? Why is nervous system at the top? Because it controls everything, right? Now, all of these are very important, but you guys you've looked at different immunotherapies. Maybe you've looked at how the body's detoxing. Maybe you've looked at the GI system. But one thing is that we need to make sure that the nervous system is in check, because actually when you look at different children with autism, there's actually a diagnosis also called encephalitis, which is brain swelling, and autism symptoms and encephalitis have a lot of the same symptoms there. And so we have to make sure that again, above everything, that every single thing here is important, but we also have to remember that the nervous system is very important as well. So he came up also with the neurodevelopmental disorder trifecta, okay? And so what we know is, again, there's our genetics, but we know that we can be exposed to toxins. For instance, in the past, now this was actually in the past, is that children that grew up in farming communities typically had higher rates of autism, okay, because they're around the pesticides, around the chemicals. But now you look at the quality of things like our water. Has anybody ever looked up what's in Broward County water? You can go to ewg.org and you can search your zip code, right? So absolutely need to be filtering the water. So, but the problem is that the plants that help filter the water can't filter the pesticides, and they can't filter other people's medications. Right, so somebody else's antipsychotic medication, if you're drinking tap water, that's going into you, right? Trace, and there's antibiotics, right? So filter your water, reverse osmosis, distilled, right? Look into that. But what we know is that if we are exposed to these things, it can affect our microbiome. Has anybody here heard of leaky gut? All right, okay, good. Super, getting more and more popular, right? So we know about the gut-brain connection, and we know that actually the majority of our serotonin and dopamine is made in the gut. Serotonin converts to melatonin, so if you have a bad gut, you're not making enough serotonin, can affect sleep, serotonin, dopamine, melatonin made in the gut. Serotonin, what does serotonin control? Like if you have low serotonin, what sort of symptoms would you have? Yeah, so depression, mood, right? So serotonin is like one of the happy hormones. Now, these things can deplete the microbiome, but there's a list of other things that we have not thought about and not put in front that can also deplete the microbiome. Number one is C-section. So Why would a C-section deplete the microbiome? So let's say there's C-section and then there's a vaginal birth, right? And so as the child is going through the canal, through the vaginal canal, they actually receive some of the probiotics from mom, right? So at the very beginning of life, vaginal birth, your child will have a better immune system, right? So C-section from the very beginning, we know that there can be significant trauma and pulling in C-sections, but just in terms of the microbiome, they don't get what's called the thrush. They don't get the healthy dose of probiotics from mom as if it were a vaginal birth. What about antibiotics? How does that affect the microbiome? It just kills everything, right? So the A in antibiotics should stand for like an atomic bomb, all right, because it does not discriminate between good and bad bacteria. It's you take an antibiotic, it's going to kill bad bacteria and the good bacteria, which means you're starting over, which now that's inflaming the gut lining, causing more leaky gut, more gut-brain connection issues. And one thing about antibiotics, a lot of you have kids that have had ear infections, right? What percentage of ear infections are viral and not bacterial? 90%. So 90% of ear infections are viral and not bacterial. So you go to the, doctor, right? They say, hey, let's just give you this antibiotic before we even do the testing. But you say, doctor, how do you even know that it's a bacterial? And because children that have an antibiotic before the age of 2 will severely have a severely challenged microbiome for the rest of their life. Okay, so antibiotics under the age of 2 limit. Some research says it limits their entire life, their ability to have a healthy microbiome. Right. So there's a time and a place for all this, but we have to know. Acetaminophen, right, over the counter, that can deplete the microbiome. Right. It depletes also glutathione in the body, your body's master antioxidant. So now it can't fight things as well. Inability to breastfeed. So why would breast milk be good for the microbiome? What's in breast milk that actually helps the gut? There's nutrients, there's healthy fats, there's lipids, there's some carbohydrates, which is actually good, but there's colostrum in there too, right? And so what we know is that kids need breast milk before 6 months. And there's certain things that prevent that, right? If mom's not producing enough milk, right? If kid doesn't want it. But also we look at things like inability to latch, right? Maybe the kid can turn his, the head all the way this way, but on this way, maybe it can't, right? So he's accepting one breast but not the other. They get fussy. There's latching issues, right? But we know that breast milk is one of the best things to heal and seal the gut, right? Especially before 6 months. And that's why you can't give a child that's less than 6 months solid foods. Why? Because their gut has holes in it, right? It has holes in it and it needs breast milk, it needs colostrum, needs those healthy fats in order to seal, and it takes 6 months in order to do that, more or less. So if that doesn't happen, now the child has pores in their gut and they get what's called leaky gut, right? Where there's whole proteins going through. And then you start to have things like autoimmune conditions, right? Because the body sees the protein barreling its way through the bloodstream and it goes to attack it. And that's a daily barrage, right? So then you start to have daily eczema. You start to have daily autoimmune. You have now allergies that are coming up that weren't there because the gut wasn't sealed, right? But the biggest thing here that everybody, because we don't test the nervous system just in general, is a hypersympathetic response. And that's what we're going to get into in just a bit, because the same exact thing that we talked about, the same exact things here that can open up the gut and have it be porous, which is leaky gut, constant stress and being in a constant fight or flight state does the same exact thing. All right, when you're in a fight or flight state, you're stressed, your nervous system going like this on the inside, right? Your kiddo's bouncing off the walls and you're like, will you just sit still? I'll buy you ice cream. I'll do anything. Candy. Right? That same stress response that you see that comes out, right? That's a high stress response. That's high cortisol. Right? Cortisol is a stress hormone. Right? When cortisol goes up, all the other good hormones go down because cortisol just trumps every single one of them. And why does cortisol win? What's so important about cortisol? The stress hormone. Why do all the other ones go down? It's because if there was a stressful situation, like Florida has apparently Panthers, the Florida Panthers. Has anybody ever seen a Florida panther? I haven't. I wouldn't want to see one. I don't know where they live. But if a panther were to walk in here, all right, and I have to use my hands and my feet and I have to run, right, that's going to be the priority. It's going to be taking away blood flow from my gut. So in that moment of high stress, my gut's not going to work properly, right? I have, children, if they're in that state for a long time, I have constipation, I have diarrhea. Adults, if there's autoimmune and gut issues, high fight or flight state, you might be diagnosed with IBS, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis. Everything else gets neglected, right? And so the hypersympathetic response, the fight or flight, go, 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 gas pedal all the time is one of the things that's going to also lead to more of these autoimmune reactions, more of this brain inflammation, more allergies, more hypersensitivities. So we have to look out for these things. We have to be able to, as much as possible, right, understand how these things come about and do our best, right? And this isn't about guilt, anything. I had tons of antibiotics when I was young. I had tubes in my ears, right? I didn't know that there was a better way, right? But today is about understanding that there's a better way. All right, so this is very heavy information, right? Because it's like, what the heck do I do? What do I do now, right? And so we have to talk about where health comes from because there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Now, there has to be the correct order, though, because does anybody here like baking? Does anybody here like eating baked foods? Hey, okay, so if you're not one, you're the other, right? All right, I'm going to make a health cake, all right? Will you join me in making this health cake? All right, so I'm going to make this cake. But first thing I'm going to do, I have this cake tin, and I'm going to put frosting in there, okay? And I'm going to take 3 whole eggs, but I'm not going to crack the eggs. I'm just going to place the eggs in there. And after, I'm going to do milk, and then I'll do flour, and then I'm going to put it in the oven for 30 minutes or so. I don't know how long it takes to make it. It's been a while. How long does it take to make a cake? 20, there you go. Okay, thank you. Yes. I'm going to take the cake out. Who here wants my health cake? Nobody, right? Why does nobody want it? Because I didn't follow the what? I didn't do the right process. I didn't find the right recipe, right? So there is an order to healing. And the thing is, you guys, you've gone through different things, and sometimes you're just grasping at like, hey, let's do this, right? But there is a certain order to healing, and we have to know where health comes from, all right? So health comes from the inside out, all right? We have a society now that thinks that we can trick the body into health, right? Has anybody seen that like the past 5 years, right? We thought that we can trick the body from the outside to change the expression from the inside out. It doesn't work that way, right? We have a system that is so incredibly intelligent, and it actually starts in the womb. So the first thing that forms when sperm and egg come together, there's a new life form. The first thing that comes together is called the notochord. It's a collection of cells. First it's 2D, and then the notochord wraps and it becomes 3D. It actually becomes a cord, a 3D structure, and that actual 3D structure is your spinal cord. So that's the first structure that was ever formed, right? And just like a tree, so when a tree has its little rootlets, has its little sprout, the trunk of the tree has to form first, and then the branches and then the leaves come out, right? The same exact thing happens with the human body, is that the spinal cord is the first thing that forms shortly after the brain forms, shortly after the heart forms, and every other organ comes from the spinal cord, okay? And so we have to put healing in the right order because your body is so incredibly intelligent, and it's always perceiving the things that are happening around you. It's perceiving and it's interacting with the toxins that you're breathing in or ingesting or putting on your skin, or right. It's receiving the stress, the sensory, right? We're going to start talking about sensory, right? Your nervous system is what perceives your reality. And so it also makes sense that if your nervous system is not in a great state, you might perceive something a different way than somebody else, right? Your child or your patient, if they're in a fight or flight, they might perceive one thing as being threatening or menacing when it wasn't so, right? So our reactions, everything that comes from the inside out, actually is as a result of our sensory first. And that's a big principle here, right? Because we talked about parts, motor, and intelligence, right? A lot of times we try to retrain the motor, but the first thing that happens is sensory before motor is there. All right, I might be losing some people. I get it. I'll keep going. So there's sensory. All right. So yes, we talked about your brain, spinal cord. There is actually a sac that is around the spinal cord that's called the meninges. The meninges on the inside of there is actually what's called cerebrospinal fluid. So we found out only about cerebrospinal fluid in 2015. When you go to bed at night, there's actually this fluid called the cerebrospinal fluid that cleanses your brain. It literally washes all the debris and all the metabolic waste throughout the day, and it sends it down the sinuses, and it's sent through your lymphatic system, and it goes away. Your body processes it. All right. Super important. Spinal cord is super important, but we know there is a structure that surrounds the spinal cord. So why would there be a structure? Why would there be a hard bony structure around the spinal cord? To protect it, right? And so again, it also makes logical sense that if that system is the most important system in your body and there is injury to that system, that it could affect the nervous system, right? And therefore it could keep the nervous system in a fight or flight state because it's saying, hey, there's a problem, hey, there's a problem. Now that fight or flight state is different for everybody. Again, it could be anxiety, could be ADHD with the nervous system going like this. It could be sensory processing where a normal sensation is now really sensitive because the senses, the nervous system is not calibrated properly, right? And so we know how important the nervous system is. We know how important the surrounding of the nervous system is. Some scientists estimate that the brain processes 11 trillion bits of information per second. Our body is made up between 36 trillion and 70 trillion cells. And every single minute of the day, it's always receiving messages from the body, right? So like if you were to get a cut on your arm, you don't have to consciously tell that cut to heal, right? You go to bed, you wake up, and it's what starts to form? A scab, right? And then more collagen, elastin, it starts to form over it, and it actually starts to heal, right? So who told it to do that? The brain, right? But how did the brain receive that signal? How did the brain know? Again, through the nerves, right? So there's nerves that go through these nerves here into the nerve roots, up the spinal cord to the brain. The brain responds, send messaging down the spinal cord, out through the nerves, back to wherever it needs it, right? Doesn't matter what it is, that system is always functioning. So the nervous system has a will and a want to receive good information and to always be able to heal itself. So what can impact that? Or rather, I don't want to go through this just yet, actually. We're going to go to the next slide. It's for a reason. All right, let's talk about sensory, okay? So how many senses do we have? 5, okay? And everybody's going to name them, right? Taste, touch, sight, smell, hearing. Did I say that? Okay. I hope that was right. What if I told you we had more senses? Yes, so you have a gut feeling. The gut has sensors and receptors in there, right? But there's also something called proprioception and mechanoreception. So all of you that have been told that you have 5 senses, you've been lied to. I'm sorry. And that's it for the PowerPoint. I'm just kidding. But we have more senses because the thing is, the 5 senses that you guys can name and maybe struggle with like me, those are our conscious senses. But what we know is that if your child or if your patients or if you are stuck with some of your body systems, which are subconscious, if those are not functioning properly, then there can actually be a subconscious interference to that subconscious function. And what I mean by that is, has anybody ever almost rolled out of bed one day and you weren't even awake, but you caught yourself like this, right? And then what happened when you instantly woke up? What happened to your heart rate? It went up, right? And what happened to just your focus and everything? Everything comes back online. But okay, we have a trauma survivor here falling off a bed. But that system right there is called your proprioception system. So that tells your brain where your body is in space. And in the same way that if the proprioception gets affected, it instantly tells your brain to essentially go into a fight or flight response, right? Heart rate, breathing, right? And again, that's the thing is that proprioception really comes from the movement of different areas of your body. So proprioception, in large part, about 60% of the proprioceptive input to your brain actually comes from movement of your spine. So as much as we turn on the lights in the morning to get up, as much as we love the smell of coffee, there's the coffee grinder, there's the smoothie going off, right? So all these senses, we put cold water on our face. as much as all these conscious senses can help wake our nervous system up or can scare us and get our nervous system in a heightened state, the proprioceptive system can also do that as well. And that's actually, again, we're talking about nobody's getting their nervous system checked. That's one of the biggest causes of the chronic fight or flight response is in the proprioceptive system. And so how does that happen, right? The 60% of the proprioceptive input that goes to our brain comes from movement of the spine. When there is a lack of movement of the spine, maybe it's trauma, maybe it's intrauterine constraint from the very beginning. Maybe it was twins. Maybe the child was trying to come out during the vaginal birth and got caught under the pubic bone. Maybe there's there's placenta previa. Maybe there's a tilting of the uterus. Maybe there's a C-section that happened, right? There was significant pulling of the neck right there. Maybe there was forceps that were used, or maybe there was induction and epidural, and the coordination to get the child out wasn't, or maybe it was the physical act of the manual, because you have to turn the baby's head 90 degrees a lot of times to get one shoulder out and then the other, right? So there can be misalignments of the spine. So if it's not in the birth process or in the womb, the average 7-year-old has fallen estimated 2,500 times, like 2,500 times, right? So some people are like, well, my child never falls. It's like, are you kidding me? But these are things that can affect the proprioceptive system. And when vertebra get out of their normal alignment, when it starts this whole inflammation process, but when that happens, it actually tells the brain a state of alert, and that's what causes the rest of it, right? So this is called disafferentation. So it's an incorrect messages going up to the brain. And that's why we talk about this, right? Because before the motor gets affected, the sensory system gets affected. Before digestive issues start, the sensory system gets affected. So everything is about input into the brain, because the brain can only fix what it can see or what it can hear. So the first step of a lot of this dysfunction is called disafferentation. It's imbalance of sensory information going to the brain, which can negatively affect neuroplasticity. Right? We heard of neuroplasticity. If something is plastic, that means it's moldable, it's movable, right? So we talk about positive neuroplasticity, means that the brain can actually form new circuits over time if it's tested, if there's habits and repetition, and if there's good quality signals, and if the nervous system is at rest, that is going to increase that. All right, so speaking of sensory, I want to play a video of Evan, because this was a patient. Evan was just classic full-on sensory kid. And actually we're going to play the video here. I'm going to speak as it goes over it. I'm not sure if volume is going to play here. And it's not. Okay. So the mom is talking to Evan, and she's saying, Evan, do you want to go to play with grandma? Do you want to go get food? Right? And Evan, with being his nervous system was so overloaded, right? We see this all the time. Sometimes kids on the spectrum or high sensory issues, they don't even know where they are, right? And it's really sad, right? Because they're locked inside of here, right? And so Evan, before starting chiropractic care, before having a balanced nervous system, was one of these kids. And we take care of lots of these kids, and it's amazing to kind of see the progress here. And I'm so sad that the information, that the volume isn't coming through here. But just after 6 months of chiropractic care, Evan is now, hearing, and the mom says, "What is that?" And he goes, "Car." And you say, "What is it?" "Car," right? And I say this with a heavy heart, because there's lots of kids that are locked into this, right? And it's so sad, and the world needs this so much. But we see all the time that if we can correct the sensory input, if we can give the nervous system a good base and an actual resting, good balance in the nervous system, and get these kids out of a fight or flight state and calm the alert response that they're living with, their brain is going to have a better ability to hear the correct information and be able to process it and respond with the correct information too. So this was Evan's story. Now, when we talk about nervous system, a lot of us think about this. Does anybody know what this diagram is? Can we guess? You go to the doctor, he has a little mallet, and he checks what? He checks the knee, right? So a lot of times when we think about, have you had your nervous system checked? Some people are like, yeah, the doctor checks my reflexes and I just do this, So what we're talking about the nervous system is not a simple knee-jerk reflex, because this is actually, while it is very valuable, it only is going to show issues that are actually very serious. What we're talking about here with nervous system balance is, there's a side of your nervous system that is kind of the go, go, go. And we call that the gas pedal, right? We know kids that are locked into the gas pedal. That's called the sympathetic nervous system. And so the sympathetic is one side of the nervous system. And the sympathetic nervous system isn't always bad. I mean, if you need a child to focus, like sit down, look at the paper, look at the book, read, we have to get through this assignment. Like it's the sympathetic nervous system that actually causes them to focus. All right. But you don't want too much of it, right? Too much gas pedal, right? It's like throwing kerosene on the fire, right? It's why kids like kids in high sympathetic dominance, fight or flight, like they love carbohydrates. They love doing stuff. They love fidgeting. They're chewing on their shirt. They're toe walking, right? They're running around. They're banging their head back and forth, right? These are kids that live in the fight or flight state. And there's a whole side. So this is the survival state, right? Adrenaline, bronchioles dilate. It's getting ready to breathe and to get away from a predator. And then you have the other side, which is the parasympathetic, right? The parasympathetic, Spanish wasn't my first language, but I know that para means stop, right? So if you just want your kid to stop and calm down, right, you want him or her to be more in the parasympathetic, because this is where actually growth and potential meet. And so the thing is that Dr. Bruce Lipton says you can't be in survival and in growth at the same time, right? What does that mean? If you only have 100% and 20% is taken up by the sympathetic nervous system, you only have 80% in order to thrive, right? In order to make new connections, in order for your digestive system to work, in order for your body to be in harmony, to make the right hormones, to be able to sleep all the way through the night when it's actually time to go to sleep, right? So you need the parasympathetic for the growth and repair and the calm and the rest and the relaxation. But if you're in the sympathetic, then you can't be in 100% thriving, right? So these are some of the things that we can see, right? So I've already mentioned some of the symptoms here, but it's everything, right? Constipation, depression, hormone issues, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia. Sorry, what I want to do is start over here, right? Because the high sympathetic is things like anxiety. It's things like diarrhea, IBS, irritability, poor sleep, insomnia, excessive sweating, manic, focus, ADHD, neurodevelopmental disorders, right? We know that these kids are locked into a hyper sympathetic overdrive, right? But that can only last for so long, right? So some of you have seen kids that are just super hyper, have ADHD, but what do they turn into when they meet, when they arrive at teenager age? They were super hyper when they were young, and now they turned into depressed, burnt out, non-motivated teenagers, right? So it can only last so long before it actually starts to burn out. And so that's why we see, and some of you guys are relating as adults here, you're like, oh my gosh, that's me, right? So this can affect everybody. So I want to talk about Rolando. This was actually one of our first kid patients here. This clinic opened 3 years ago, but Rolando was a very high sensory kiddo. He needed mom. He either needed mom or a tablet. And if he didn't have any one of those, it was just meltdown. Wasn't listening to anything. He would typically play by himself, but he wouldn't really play because he really just liked the iPad. So this was kind of his story. He was always really inflamed. His face was always so red. He had trouble eating, sleeping, and pooping. So this kid was, I think he was pooping like once a week, right? Yeah. So, but he actually started to get adjusted here. And after the first adjustment, he started playing all by himself. He's actually like organizing and sorting based on colors here, which is just really cute. And this is right here in the kids' room. But yeah, the first thing to come back online was pooping, right? As soon as kids start getting adjusted, they start pooping. And yeah, it's almost like we hit the poop button. And it's really nice. Like they go home, it's like, oh, he had a big poop, And then there's kids that, poop every 2 or 3 days, and they're like, oh, now we're getting to like the once every other day, or now it's like almost daily, or maybe she missed today, but she doubled up today on the pooping, And that's the thing, is that kids need to be able to eat, sleep, and poop, right? Just like a plant needs water, sunlight, nutrients, right? Kids need to be able to eat, sleep, and poop. And when that doesn't happen, again, that's where other things start to compound on top of that. And so that's Rolando's story. So yeah, it takes a village, right? The stories I'm sharing here, this is not chiropractic only. because obviously it takes a village. Like I have kiddos that I take care of, and I have to tell them, hey, you should start to integrate these other therapies because his nervous system's super calm, but I can tell that he needs these specific therapies. So it takes a village. Chiropractic doesn't have to be the star of the show. It just has to be a conversation, right? Nervous system focused care just has to be a conversation. All right, so where is the disconnect in this, right? What does chiropractic have to do with the nervous system? We kind of answered it, but we talked about all the ways that there can be stresses to this top bone in the neck. All right, this top bone in the neck is called the atlas. It's C1. And the reason why there's so many problems with the atlas is because it's not shaped like the other vertebra. So all the other vertebrae of the spine kind of click into place. They're supported by the one above and below typically, but the atlas is the only vertebra that doesn't, it's not really attached. I mean, yes, it's kind of supported above and below, but it doesn't fit as well as all the other ones. So when there is stress and trauma, like I said, even as early as birth, it can affect, number one, autonomic balance. Because there's a nerve up there called the vagus nerve. Anybody heard the vagus nerve? VAGUS, not like this Vegas, right? Las Vegas is where people go to stay up all night, right? But the vagus nerve is actually what helps put kiddos to sleep, right? So the vagus nerve helps to calm everything down. But when there is a misalignment there, it can actually decrease blood flow to the brain. Some of you are here, you're dealing with chronic headaches and migraines, right? Which is a spasming of the blood vessel, and you have to ask, why is the blood vessel spasming? Who told it to do that? Or who didn't fix it, right? Even if something were to happen, you got hit, why am I still living with this, right? It can affect cerebrospinal fluid, which it can make you feel foggy and decrease your body's ability to detox. It can cause increased inflammation. And then it can also affect spinal cord tension, right? So kiddos that are toe walking, like 100% of the time have neurological tension in their nervous system. It's the same reason why when somebody has sciatic pain, they don't like the toe coming towards because it's going to lengthen the nerve. So if anybody with sciatic pain, actually doing this is very relieving. So you take a kid who prefers to do this all the time, it's literally taking physical pressure off of the spinal cord. But these sort of things can be affected just by this top bone also being affected. So there's tons of research that also shows this too. I won't stay on this for very long, but we've actually found that adjustments actually alter the sensory motor integration. So it actually helps the nervous system balance and helps the frontal lobe actually coordinate better. Because a lot of times with these kiddos is there's a difference, there's a battle between the frontal lobe, which is your reasoning, your rationing, your pre-planning, your forethought, your consequences. What if I throw this glass thing across the room, what's going to happen, right? That's the frontal lobe. Oftentimes there's a war between the frontal lobe and the emotional limbic, the amygdala, the fight or flight part of the brain, right? And a lot of times when we see these outward symptoms of the gas pedal go, 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 it means that the frontal lobe is not being stimulated because of imbalance. And so there's been tons of research that has showed that adjustments actually do increase the plasticity of the brain. What else? We got a couple here. I'm gonna go rapid fire. All right. Yes, there's more that shows that chiropractic adjustments get individuals out of the sympathetic fight or flight state. And more testimonials here, but I'm gonna keep going. Autonomic balance, okay? Tons of studies that are showing that, yes, that when somebody has a subluxation or a misalignment, it is going to affect how the brain perceives information in this area. And this is some of the testing that we do in this office. For instance, we have this simple scan that we run up the back. And a newborn, for instance, should not have significant temperature differences from one side to the other, right? Unless your baby's doing CrossFit or doing one-sided neck exercises, the muscle tone should not be increased on one side, or the temperature should not be different, right? So when we see this, we know that the mechanism that is meant to regulate skin temperature is off, right? Which is an autonomic response. So when we see significant temperature differences from one side to the other, we know that the autonomic nervous system is being affected and that there is a misalignment here, right? It's affecting the proprioception, which is telling the brain, hey, there's a problem. The brain responds with inflammation and it starts this whole cascade. And some of you have folders, right? If you look at the back of the folder, the back there, every single one of these areas of the spine, there are nerves that leave there, right? And so you can see on the far right is a list of symptoms and the levels that this comes from. For instance, the nerves at the very top here, we talked about the vagus nerve, that one goes everywhere. We talked about the top bone in the neck also controls blood supply to the head, so you can have headaches and migraines. We go a little bit lower down. These are the nerves that go to the thyroid, right? So your brain communicates to your thyroid through the nerves primarily. Neurological first, chemical second, but these nerves go to the muscles here. So if a child has torticollis, right, and always is turned one way, now they have plagiocephaly because they actually weren't able to turn their head because there was a nerve that was tightening the muscle here. These nerves go down here, control all the function of the arms, shoulders, arms, and hands. Nerves a little bit farther down go to the valve in the stomach, right? If the valve in the stomach is not staying closed, now you have acid reflux, now you have spitting up. Go a little bit further down. These are the nerves that go to digestion a little bit farther, digestive organs, so constipation, diarrhea, upset, colic in the newborn, right? And so we can see that, the body was designed intelligently and there's a certain order, and we can actually start to see that there. Now, this is an example of a kiddo where we were actually trying to do the scan, and we couldn't get the full thing, right? Because the kid would just launch backwards, and honestly, it was a close call, right? But you can see, again, when there's significant temperature differences there, it's like, why would the body choose to do that, right? Why would the body inflame itself, right? Because there's things that are going on underneath. So we were actually able to get a follow-up scan, and this is actually what a semi-good scan should look like, right? There's some colors there, but not as severe as this one, right? So, and this is what we get to do, all right? So how do we get life change, like very specifically, is that we're allowing the nervous system to be at ease and in a more calm state because we are identifying what is keeping it there, okay? So we started this presentation saying, if the human body is so intelligent, if my child is so intelligent, if my body is so intelligent, why has it not healed automatically? And this is, again, just one of those reasons there. So lots of research talking about how chiropractic adjustments change brain studies as well. So yeah, what causes this is not just physical stress, but what happens to your shoulders when you're in a lot of stress? It's a super day, like long day at work, right? You do this, right? So we know that these things can not only get caused by big physical events that happen, but it also, what do we do now more than ever, is we do this, and kids on iPads, us as adults, we drive all day, we're Danny needs to always get adjusted because she's on the phone like this, and I adjust her and put her back together, right? But the things that we do are not only big physical things, but we know how mental stress can also cause these subluxations or misalignments, therefore perpetuating the issue, and even chemical, right? We know that when our nervous system comes into contact with foreign things, it has to work extra hard, and that could be one of the things that drains our ability to respond to stress appropriately. So how common is this? Medical doctor from Germany assessed 1,000 infants, and he found that 80% were found to have vertebral misalignment of the upper neck, right? Actual physical misalignment of that top bone in the neck. Other medical professionals have looked. So this was a study. This was in the American Osteopathic Association. 1,250 infants were evaluated during the first 5 days of life. 90% had suffered birth trauma and strain of the neck and cranium, and only 10% had severe trauma. Now, the ones that had severe trauma were actually given the diagnosis of like torticollis, right, plagiocephaly, given actual, latent spinal cord injury, but the rest of them didn't have any symptoms, right? And so when we look at this, we just understand that, there's a time and a place, like when the baby needs to come out, like we sometimes have to do things that are a little aggressive and a little physical, right? But we understand that as soon as that baby leaves the hospital, if Uncle Joe were to do the same exact pulling, or if a stranger did the same exact pulling on your child, it would be labeled battery and you would go to jail, right? It would be abuse, right? So we just have to understand that while there's a time and a place for physical assistance and manual assistance, we have to understand that it does cause effect here, okay? One doctor, Heiner Biedermann, MD, he talked about how when there are misalignments, it affects the signals and therefore has consequences in the developing nervous system. What he talks about is long labor, like if the child has struggle going out or if they keep going in and out. Talked about C-section, extraction with vacuum, twins or triplets if there's multiple babies, right, and there's intrauterine constraint, and then prenatal positional abnormalities, right? So breech, right? sideways, right? There's different positional things that can lead to these things. All right, so we're almost done here. So we talk about, most things have side effects. Has anybody heard a medication commercial recently? Like, oh my gosh, it just keeps on going. It's like, oh, it may cause sudden death, and you're like, I would just rather live with whatever I got. I'm good. But we don't call the things that happen, the good things, we don't call the effects of chiropractic adjustments side effects. We call them side benefits, right? Because every time you get adjusted or every time your kiddo gets adjusted, they have another opportunity to thrive, right? Even if their nervous system has been locked in to a state of stress, they have the ability to thrive. Even if you have been living with something where a doctor has told you that you're going to have to live with this for the rest of your life, or maybe you have just thought that yourself, it doesn't have to be, right? Now, if you keep doing the same exact thing, you're probably going to get same exact results, right? Definition of insanity. So you have to do something different in order to get better results. But we just know that people that get adjusted, kids that get adjusted, I have so many parents that say, hey, I will just tell you that my daughter's immune system has been freaking awesome since getting adjusted. Like, she's been sick once over the whole entire past year, and it was only for like a few days, and they just bounce right back. Children and people are sleeping amazingly. Like, there's so many different benefits to chiropractic. And so this is really where I want to start to, give you guys the opportunity to get some of these things checked. Because maybe you've heard this and you say, okay, this sounds good. Like, maybe I've done the gut testing, maybe I'm doing the different therapies, but I haven't really had my nervous system checked, or I haven't really had my child's nervous system checked. And I want to make that really easy to do. So I just want you to know, in this office, number one, the history means a ton. Okay, so how we determine how long or how much care a child is going to need or an adult is going to need is really dependent upon how big was the trauma or the stress and how long has it been there, right? How long has the brain heard the same exact signals and ingrained that in its neuroplasticity? Because that's going to determine how often, how long we need to continue to adjust this child, putting new signals into their nervous system and help it to rewire. So we absolutely, most doctors you go into, you fill out the paperwork, you go in the new patient room, and they're like, so what are you here for? And you're like, did you not listen to anything that I said, right? So we absolutely take time to do that. But the biggest thing here is our insight scans, okay? Some of the scans that I've shown here actually can tell us the resting state of either your nervous system or your child's nervous system. So we can see, are you too far to the sympathetic gas pedal, go, 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 fight or flight nervous system, or are you too much in the brake pedal, exhausted, not enough sympathetic nervous system, way too exhausted? So we're able to see those sort of things, and then we're also able to see how full your battery is. Because over time, again, if you're in the fight or flight state, it's not just that you stay high functioning fight or flight, you start to go low functioning fight or flight, or even worse, low functioning exhaustion. And so those are some of the things that we can see on the insight scans. And just like where you had seen where there were issues going along the spine, we're actually able to visualize that. So big picture is that we're able to quantify the stress that's in the nervous system. And then we're able to actually figure out where it's coming from and get you, either you or your child set up on a plan that's meant to help them adapt through these things. All right. The second, so we do these things on the first visit. The second visit, we go through a report of findings where I go through all the findings with you, right? And going through your history, going through the scans, right? You're actually going to know what's going on with your kiddo, right? And that's the most valuable thing, because again, once the kiddo starts to have a happy and balanced nervous system, everything gets better, right? Your life gets better, their life gets better. We hear amazing results from other therapists saying that, oh my gosh, this child is doing so much better, right? And again, chiropractic doesn't have to take the story, be in the spotlight, but it has to be part of the conversation as well, all right? For those of you interested in doing this, we include everything. We do the full scans. And if there's any of you that are here representing like older children or yourself, we also, if sometimes we need to take x-rays, not really on younger children, but we do all the scans and any x-rays that's needed. Usually that's $297, but we lower it to just $67 for those of you that are here today, because you've already heard this story and you know exactly what to expect. All right, so we don't want finances to be a barrier for you, so we make it just $67. We do ask that you make the appointment tonight if this is something that you actually want to do, and we do ask that you actually just pay for that appointment, right? Because those of you, those that make the appointment that typically don't pay, what do? You don't do what? You don't show up, and we want to make sure that if this is you, if you want to get this testing for you or for your child, that we actually have a spot for you, right? And we will block out that time to make sure nobody else gets it. All right. Some of you have questions like, what do adjustments look like? Because we adjust all ages in this office. Okay, we see about 70 to 80% pediatric. We also see a lot of the parents that come in here as well. And so some of you are wondering, has anybody ever here seen a baby adjustment? All right, so this is a little baby, maybe just probably 1 to 2 months old, maybe, if that. So this is a baby adjustment. Wait for it. And that's it. All right, yeah. There's nothing to wait for. That's it. That's it. So babies don't have the muscles, the musculature. They don't have the, they're not locked in. They haven't been living with us for 30 years, right? Maybe there was birth trauma that happened. They don't have the musculature locking them in, so they just need very gentle pressure. A lot of times it's with this top bone in the neck, the atlas, and just very gentle pressure, and it starts to move over. And you notice that the baby was sleeping, right? The baby didn't even wake up, right? And so some of the best adjustments in here are the ones where baby doesn't even wake up, and it's awesome, right? So we absolutely adjust babies.
Is it long term?
That's a good question. If the nervous system has been locked in for a long time, it will tend to want to go back to the way it was. All right. So repetition is a very real thing, right? So the more stress that a child has encountered, or an individual, and the longer that has been there, that means the more locked in their nervous system has been. So it's very common that we actually need to have repetition in there, because while a child can function better after one adjustment, and that's awesome, right? How neurology functions is it functions with building blocks, right? And it just so happened that they got stuck at the very beginning and didn't progress past it. So if we truly want to see these kiddos fully thrive, right? Maybe a child's dealing with just issues eating, sleeping, pooping. Maybe they're having chronic ear infections. Maybe they're just colicky. Maybe there's torticollis, plagiocephaly, there's spit up, there's reflux, right? These are things that we see oftentimes in the first year of life and in the first couple months of life. If those things are not addressed, then it turns into bigger issues, and you actually start to see issues with motor milestones and issues with speech, ADHD, meltdowns and tantrums, outbursts, right? So what we want to do is, a lot of times we'll see what's called the soft signs of healing, where sometimes moms and parents will come in here saying, hey, I just want my girl to talk, right? I just want her to be able to progress with speech. I want to be able to have a conversation with her. But we also find that child wasn't eating, wasn't sleeping, wasn't pooping the entire first year of life, finding some of those things, chronic ear infections. What we oftentimes see first is that the soft signs of healing come first, right? So first thing to come back online is eating, sleeping, pooping, usually, right? And once the digestive system starts working for days in a row, weeks in a row, months in a row, it's building that solid foundation, right? And that's where you start to see more social engagement, focusing, listening to direction. You can redirect them. They're getting more easier with transitions, putting on clothes, brushing teeth, eating, trying different foods isn't as big of a struggle, because we've helped the nervous system eat, sleep, poop for long enough so that it actually finds balance, and then it's able to build into the next step, right? So it goes eating, sleeping, pooping is the first one. Middle phase is focusing better, eye contact, and then the third phase is those big things that a lot of moms and parents want, which is motor milestones, which is speech, which is confidence, which is independence, using the potty by themselves. Like, there's so many big things, but we can't get to the big things if the smaller systems are offline as well. I know that wasn't really exactly what you asked, but it's super important, right? Because if your goal is for your child, if you have a nonverbal child, for instance, and you want them to speak, speaking isn't going to be the first thing that's going to come back online, right? Because that's not how the neurology was formed, right? How the neurology was formed is if we're going to go back and try to help this child rewire their nervous system, we got to go in the same exact bite-sized pieces in order to build up, all right? So this is a kiddo getting adjusted. Let's see if these will play. They might be playing all at once. No, okay. All right, so this is Noah. This is little baby Noah. He had major meltdowns and tantrums. Like this kid, you could not have him sit on the table at all, right? Some people ask, how will you ever take care of my sensory child? They are just running around, right? It's a process, right? We build trust and everything, but we are able to take care of even the toughest of cases. And Noah was a kid he would just had rage in his eyes. You could see the fire in his eyes. Like when he had the meltdown, it was just nothing could stop this kid, right? But as he started going through care, he now has a really balanced nervous system, and he's actually speaking a lot better. He's putting together sentences, and he's actually like communicating. So the last one here, I was going to show a video of me kind of doing some adjustments. There's some adjustments here. We do what's called we ask kids, do you like to go flying, right? And sometimes we do flying adjustments, just very gentle adjustments there. A lot of the adjustments are just very gentle, sustained pressure here. A lot of kids really like comfort, hugs, and sensory pressure, and then some kids like just really don't. So either way, we make it work. All right. There it goes. I don't know if it's gonna play. All right. But yes, this is one question that we get a lot. How long does it take, right? And again, how much stress and how long has it been there? Because the brain's ability to change in response to experience goes down as they age, right? So when they're really young, their brain's like a sponge; they can learn anything, right? Now that being said, don't lose hope, right? Because again, your body has the ability to change. What we know is that the earlier that we can get to an individual, the amount of effort such change requires is a lot lower, right? Because their nervous system's still seeking, it's still trying to organize everything. So number one is how long does it take? And then yes, how will you ever get my sensory/spectrum kid to stay still? We are magic workers. We do amazing things. So that's all I can say about that. Cool. I just want to answer like one or two frequently asked questions as well, and I want to honor your time here as well. We talk about the initial evaluation. It's just 67, and it's for you and any family member that you may want, right? It's 67 for each individual. We get a couple questions. All right. Number one is, do you take my insurance? All right. So insurance in this country really tries to treat symptoms, right? Yeah. It's about minimizing a symptom, treating pain, that sort of thing. So when it comes to pediatric chiropractic, if you were to tell your insurance company, hey, I'm bringing my child for their ADHD or autism spectrum, I'm taking them to a chiropractor, will you pay for it? It doesn't really add up, right? Because insurance companies are so archaic. They say, what the heck do spinal or like adjustments have to do with autism, right? And there's just a huge disconnect there. And so what we do here is my job is to help your child or to help your nervous system function at its best. And increasing function isn't a billable code, all right? So we are not able to be in network with insurance. But that being said, we do offer in-office discounts, all right? So a question that I get is, how often will I have to come here, or how often will I have to bring my kid? All right, we don't operate the same way that an adult chiropractor would, okay? If you're an adult or a teen and you're going to a chiropractor and you're seeing that chiropractor once a week, that chiropractor believes that he or she has to adjust every single thing because they're not going to see you for a week. They adjust every single thing. But the problem with that is that can overload the nervous system. So a lot of these kids, or a lot of us that have been stuck in fight or flight response, need more consistent adjustments. So what we do is we don't charge these huge prices to have you come in here once a week. A lot of the care does need to be very consistent, much like a lot of the other therapies that you're in. So what we do is after the 67, and I am able to go through the results of the scans with you, we will go through an exact care plan. And so the majority of our visits are between 40 and 70, just depending on what your kiddo needs. All right. So if you're wondering like, how much is it going to be, right? How often, how many visits? I don't know that yet. How often? I don't know that yet. And for what duration? I don't know that yet, but the scans will help me to determine that, right? I just want you to know that a lot of times care does start more than the traditional chiropractor, because we're not a traditional chiropractor, right? And I don't want to overload your super hyper sensory overloaded gas pedal, kerosene on fire kid. I don't want them to have more meltdowns and tantrums when I adjust every single thing, right? I want to be very specific, and I want to choose one or two or three things, and I want to be very gentle to help calm their nervous system down, right? But the way that I figure that out is actually through the initial process, through the insight scans as well. Good. The first appointment takes usually 45 minutes to 60 minutes, just depends on how well we can get the scan, right? How quickly we can do that. Good. Awesome. So, in terms of your time, I will take as many questions privately as needed. So I'll be here for as long as you need. Right? I won't do public questions because I want to honor your time here. But I'll be here for as long as anybody needs. If you would like to schedule an appointment and get this neurological testing for yourself or for your kiddo, we just ask that you pass by the front desk there. Danny and Genesis will ask, mornings or afternoons work better for you, and they will get that set up. All right. I told you at the beginning, right? Regardless of if you make a decision tonight to have the opportunity to get this testing, my goal was to have you learn all about these factors that can keep an individual stuck, and try to give you action steps through it. All right. So thank you for joining here tonight. And if anybody has any questions, like I said, I'll be over here. If you have any questions, come up, talk to me for as long as we need. All right. Mm-hmm. Hi.